The silent ward on Clyros 9, the stars over Clyros 9 glowed dimly, their light scattered by a thin layer of toxic clouds. Inside a small orbiting medical outpost, human nurse Evelyn Hart moved silently through the corridors. The air smelled of antiseptic and metal, and the hum of life support machines echoed like tired breaths. She was the only human assigned to this alien ward, the Clyrathi ward, where the last survivors of a dying species waited for an end they could not escape. The Clyrathi were once a proud race, tall and silver-skinned, their voices like soft music. Now their bodies had grown pale and fragile, their luminous eyes fading with each hour. No medicine could cure them. No scientist could explain what was killing them. It was as if something unseen had drained the life from their souls, leaving only empty shells. Evelyn had seen many forms of death during her service, but this one felt different. It wasn't disease, it was sorrow, ancient and heavy, pressing against her heart each time she entered the ward. Every night she would check the vitals, adjust the tubes, whisper small words of comfort. Most of them no longer spoke, only blinked weakly. But that night, something was different. The oldest patient, a Clyrathi elder named Vorin, opened his dim eyes and looked directly at her. His lips trembled as he formed words through the mask. "Human, sing to us, please." Evelyn froze, thinking she had misheard. Then another voice, weaker yet clear, joined him. "Please, nurses, sing." Her heart pounded, confusion mixing with pity. "You want me to sing?" she asked softly. Dozens of glowing eyes turned toward her. Pleading silently, she hesitated, her hands trembling. No one had ever asked her that. Not in the sterile halls of space hospitals. Not since Earth. Singing was something she had buried long ago, a memory from a childhood she barely remembered. Her grandmother used to sing lullabies about the stars, about home, about love that reached across galaxies. Evelyn had forgotten the words but not the feeling, so she took a slow breath and began humming, her voice soft and unsure. The sound filled the ward, small at first, then growing gentle and warm. Machines kept beeping, but their rhythm changed, slowing, almost matching her melody as she sang. Something extraordinary happened. Tiny particles of light began to rise from the air, soft, silver and moving like fireflies. They floated above the alien beds, shimmering like dust in sunlight. The Clyrathi's eyes widened, weak smiles forming for the first time in weeks. Tears rolled down Evelyn's cheeks as she kept singing, her voice shaking but steady. The song seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her own memory. Each note carried warmth, reaching into the shadows of the ward. The lights grew brighter, swirling slowly, forming shapes, vague figures with long arms and flowing energy. The aliens whispered a single word in unison, "Home," before the monitors flatlined. Silence filled the room, but the silver lights did not fade. They hovered over the bodies, pulsing softly as if waiting. Evelyn stepped back, fear mixing with wonder. Her communicator beeped. Command wanted her report, but she couldn't speak. Something sacred had just happened. Something beyond science. She stood alone in the ward, surrounded by glowing fragments of souls, and deep inside a voice whispered to her, "They heard you." Evelyn didn't understand what it meant, but she felt peace. For the first time, death had not felt like an ending. It had felt like a song. Outside the window, the storm clouds over Clyros 9 began to part, and for a moment the dying world below glowed with light. She didn't know that this was only the beginning, that her voice had awakened something ancient in the void, and the galaxy was about to remember the power of a human song. The lights that wouldn't fade the next morning. The ward remained silent yet alive with a strange presence. The silver light still hovered over the empty beds, pulsing faintly like breathing stars. Evelyn stood there in disbelief. The reports she had written crumpled in her trembling hands. The station's commander, a tall, cold-spoken officer named Draven Cole, arrived with a team of scientists. They examined the ward, scanned for radiation, energy leaks and anomalies, but nothing made sense. "No energy source detected," one muttered, staring at the glowing mist. "And yet, it persists." Draven turned to Evelyn. "You said they asked you to sing?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. And when I did, they smiled. And then those lights appeared." He frowned, recording her statement. "There's no scientific basis for that." But even he couldn't hide the unease in his eyes. Days passed, and the lights did not fade. They drifted gently, following Evelyn wherever she went, floating like soft memories of what once was at night when the others slept. She would sit by the observation window and hum quietly, Each time she did, the lights brightened, swirling in slow circles as if listening. She could feel something in them. Not fear, not anger, but longing. Sometimes she thought she heard faint whispers like voices calling from far away. Home. Bridge. Heart. The echoes came and went. It wasn't the language of the Klirathi anymore, it was older, resonating through her very bones. One night, the station alarms blared. Another ship had arrived, carrying survivors from the surface of Klyros 9. They were even weaker than the first group. Their skin cracked, their eyes dull gray. Evelyn rushed to help them, placing them in the remaining beds. The doctors worked with sterile precision, but the readings dropped rapidly. The new patients were dying faster than anyone expected. And once again, as they gasped for breath, one reached out with trembling claws and whispered, "Sing to us, human." Her heart froze. The same words as before, Draven shouted, "No! Whatever you did last time caused this phenomenon. We must observe, not interfere." But Evelyn didn't listen. She saw the pleading in the alien's eyes, the same desperate hope she had seen before. She took a step forward and began to sing again. This time her voice was stronger, clearer, carried by something beyond courage. The melody rose softly, echoing through the metal walls. The monitor stabilized instantly, heart rates increasing, oxygen levels rising, and then the silver light burst brighter than before, filling the entire ward in luminous waves. The scientists shielded their eyes as faint figures appeared within the glow, tall, shimmering silhouettes with kind faces and glowing veins of light. They looked like the Klirathi, but ancient, wiser, whole, peaceful. Evelyn stopped singing, her breath caught. As one of the glowing figures turned to her and smiled, "You hear us," it whispered, its voice like music and wind combined. "The bridge has opened again." Draven staggered back, shouting for containment, but the scanners went wild. No energy spike, no radiation surge, just pure harmonic resonance. The spirits began to gather around the dying aliens, their hands merging with the frail bodies. The patients began to glow softly, breathing easier, their color returning faintly. The station lights flickered as the temperature dropped several degrees. And then, in one blinding flash, all went still again. When the light faded, the spirits were gone, but every alien on those beds was asleep, peacefully alive. Evelyn's song had brought them back from the edge. Later, the council transmission came through, demanding an explanation. Draven hesitated but could not hide the truth. A human nurse sang, and the dead returned. Across the galaxy, that single report spread faster than light. Some called it a miracle, others called it human witchcraft. Evelyn didn't care what they named it. She sat in the dim ward, surrounded by the silver motes that now glowed brighter whenever she breathed. She whispered softly to herself, "You said bridge, but to where?" Outside the window, the world of Klyros 9 shimmered with faint auroras, and far beyond the stars, ancient voices stirred, waiting for her next song. The Song of Resonance. The reports of the singing human nurse spread faster than any official transmission could stop. From the outer colonies to the core worlds, everyone was talking about it. How a single voice had done what fleet, science, and faith could not. Evelyn became a symbol, though she never asked for it. She was still on the Klyros 9 station, still tending to patients, still haunted by the soft glow of lights that followed her like guardian spirits. Weeks passed, and researchers arrived from every corner of the galaxy. They brought scanners, resonance analyzers, and emotion frequency recorders. They wanted to understand the phenomenon, the connection between her voice and the revival of the dying Klirathi. Evelyn agreed to let them record her singing, though she hated being treated like an experiment. When she sang again in the observation chamber, the instruments went wild. Her voice registered as a harmonic pattern that matched no known human frequency. It pulsed in perfect synchronization with the planet's magnetic field. Dr. Varen, the xenophysicist leading the study, stared at the data in disbelief. "Her song isn't just sound, it's resonance with life energy," another whispered. "It's impossible. Unless humanity once shared a link with the Klirathi world." Evelyn didn't understand their theories. She only knew that when she sang, she could feel something. It wasn't just emotion. It was like her heart vibrated in rhythm with the universe. She could sense things before they happened, the hum of approaching ships, the sorrow of patients before they spoke, and sometimes when she closed her eyes, she could see faint images, vast plains of light, countless figures moving in harmony, all humming the same melody. She began to realize this wasn't magic or religion. It was connection, the oldest kind. The kind forgotten by species that had traded their souls for technology. Then one night, when the station entered eclipse, she heard a whisper clearer than any before. "Your kind sang to us once before the fall." Evelyn turned sharply, thinking someone was behind her. But there was only the soft silver mist hovering near the ceiling. The voice came again, calm and melodic. "When we fell into silence, your song kept the stars awake." Her breath caught. "Who are you?" she whispered. "The memory of what you were," the voice replied. "And what you will be again, the next day." The research team detected new energy readings coming from the planet below. Klyros 9 had been dead for centuries, but now faint signs of vegetation appeared on its surface. Small, glowing trees spreading from the crash sites of ancient cities. When Evelyn sang once more, the planet itself seemed to respond. Faint tremors echoing in rhythm with her melody. Draven Cole, now both frightened and fascinated, stood watching through the observation window. "She's not just healing them. She's waking the world." The scientists named it the resonance phenomenon, but the survivors called it the return of the song. Evelyn became the center of every transmission. The Galactic Council demanded she stop her unauthorized spiritual interference, fearing chaos among the star nations. But she refused, quietly saying, "I'm not preaching, I'm listening." That night, she returned to the ward where the last few Clyrathi slept peacefully under the floating lights. She sat beside them, humming softly. And this time, the lights didn't just glow, they began to pulse in patterns, forming a gentle wave of sound that filled the room with warmth. It wasn't only her singing anymore, the aliens were singing back, not with voices but with light. Through the ship's glass walls, the universe seemed to hum along. Even the hum of the engines fell in rhythm. Even the air vibrated softly. It was as if everything living and once living was connected through one ancient melody that only humans had remembered how to carry. Evelyn didn't know how far her song would reach, but somewhere across the distant stars, worlds began to stir. Old relics hummed faintly, ruins glowed again, and forgotten machines powered on for the first time in millennia. The universe was listening, and for the first time in galactic history, the echo of a single human voice began to reshape destiny. The Council's fear. The Galactic Council sat in its grand chamber above the capital world of Varela Prime. Vast windows looked out into the spiral arms of the galaxy, their lights shimmering like veins of gold. Inside, tension filled the air. Every representative from 100 worlds whispering about one thing: the human nurse of Klyros 9. Reports had spread like wildfire, faster than light, faster than rumor. And no one could stop them now. A single human woman singing had done what billions of credits and centuries of science could not. She had touched the fabric of souls. "Humans have always been unpredictable," hissed a scaly diplomat from the Drath Union, his eyes flicking nervously. "They meddle where they don't belong." "They were supposed to be primitive," another counselor barked. "Now their voices call the dead to life? Do you not see the danger?" The chamber erupted in murmurs until the High Chancellor, a being of shimmering energy, raised a hand. "The recordings from Klyros 9, it said slowly, show impossible resonance. The human frequency disrupts natural entropy. That means, interrupted another voice sharply, that humanity holds power we cannot control." Back on Klyros 9, Evelyn didn't know she had become the most debated being in the galaxy. She only knew that the lights above the ward had grown stronger, forming graceful arcs of motion like rivers of aurora. Every time she sang, they followed her movements, like they were alive, understanding her emotions before she even spoke. Sometimes, when she stopped singing, she could hear faint laughter, gentle, ancient, and filled with warmth that made her smile through tears. But she also began to feel something else, a growing weight, a deep awareness that she was being watched, not by spirits but by governments. A small shuttle arrived on the outpost one night, carrying a single envoy. He introduced himself as Ambassador Kale, a calm, gray-skinned alien whose voice carried no accent. He bowed slightly. "Nurse Evelyn Hart, the Council requests your presence." Evelyn frowned. "I'm needed here," she said softly. Gesturing to the recovering Clyrathi, Kale shook his head. "You are needed everywhere." The council hall was vast, echoing like a cathedral carved from crystalline light. When Evelyn stood before the assembly, every eye turned to her. Some glared with suspicion, others with fear and a few with awe. The High Chancellor spoke. Human Evelyn Hart, you stand accused of destabilizing the natural balance of life and death. Explain your actions. Evelyn's hands trembled, but her voice did not. I sang for the dying. That's all. A murmur swept through the chamber, disbelief and outrage blending like storm winds. The Drath ambassador slammed his clawed hand on the desk. She violates every law of biological separation. Life is not meant to return. Evelyn met his gaze quietly. Then why did they ask me to sing? Her question silenced them all. The Chancellor leaned forward. You claim the dead asked you? Yes, she said simply. And they listened too. Prove it, someone shouted from the floor. Evelyn hesitated, then took a slow breath, closed her eyes, and began to sing. Her voice filled the entire chamber, soft yet vast, carrying warmth and sorrow that cut through every species translation device. The sound wasn't loud, it was pure, like light made audible. The council's lights flickered, the air shimmered. And then, the impossible happened again. Shapes of radiant energy appeared around her. Spirits, ancestors and ancient guardians of countless species. Some counselors fell to their knees. Others fled in terror. The High Chancellor trembled, its glowing form flickering. This is not possible. Evelyn opened her eyes, still singing, and the spirits turned to the counselors, bowing silently before fading into light. When the song ended, the chamber was filled with stunned silence. Evelyn's voice was calm but carried truth. You fear us because you don't understand us. But humans never sought to control death. We only tried to comfort it. The Chancellor's light dimmed, whispering, You carry an ancient echo, human. Something older than stars. Evelyn simply nodded. Maybe, or maybe it's just love. Later that night, as she was escorted back to her quarters, Kale looked at her with awe. What you did today will change everything, he said softly. Evelyn looked out the window, her reflection framed by the stars. I didn't change anything, she whispered. I just reminded them to listen. But deep within the council archives, hidden alarms began to flash. Energy patterns across the galaxy were changing. Worlds once silent were beginning to hum. Planets once dead began to pulse with faint light. And somewhere beyond known space, something ancient awakened, whispering a single word through the void. Humanity. The return of the ancestors. The council's broadcast of Evelyn's song spread across every known star system. At first it was met with disbelief, then fear, then silence. But silence did not last long. From the forgotten mining colonies of the outer belt to the temples of the Vishari priests, strange phenomena began to occur. Dead worlds began to hum. Long cold ruins shimmered faintly and spectral figures walked beneath alien suns. It was as if Evelyn's song had awakened something older than the galaxies themselves. Back on Klyros 9, the planet once known for its endless storms now glowed with life. The black skies had softened into pale gold, and from the cracks in its dead soil grew shimmering trees whose leaves sang when touched by the wind. The surviving Klirathi children ran barefoot across the glowing fields, chasing the silver motes that drifted like living stars, and at the heart of it all, standing beneath the aurora-lit sky, was Evelyn. Her eyes reflected the same light as the horizon, tired yet calm, knowing that something beautiful was returning. One night, while she walked through the ruins of an old Klirathi temple, she heard the familiar hum, the resonance that followed her everywhere. It deepened, layered with countless tones, and out of the air emerged forms, thousands of them. Ancestors, tall, radiant, shimmering beings of pure memory. They stood silently around her, their faces kind, their eyes vast with emotion. The tallest among them spoke, his voice like the sound of a gentle river. Your song carried us home, child of Earth. Evelyn fell to her knees, trembling. I don't understand why me? The being smiled. Because humans remember what others forgot, the sound of compassion. As she listened, visions filled her mind. She saw stars being born in the void, life weaving itself into harmony. She saw ancient civilizations singing across galaxies to keep their worlds alive. And she saw the moment when the voices went silent, when pride replaced connection, when logic buried empathy, but humanity, small and fragile, had never stopped singing, even in war, even in loss. They sang to remember who they were. And now, through Evelyn, that forgotten voice had returned to the stars. The Klirathi ancestors spread across the planet, their glowing forms merging with trees, rivers and the air itself everywhere they went. The dead world began to breathe again. Oceans formed where ash once lay, and crystal flowers bloomed in the shadows of broken cities. The living Klirathi wept, touching the spirits who once were their forebears, feeling warmth and forgiveness flow through them. Evelyn watched, tears streaming down her face, as the ancient being turned to her again. "You have done what the stars waited for," he said. "You reminded life to sing again, back in orbit." The Galactic Council watched through deep space feeds, their scanners overwhelmed by impossible readings. Entire planetary magnetic fields were shifting to harmonic frequencies that matched Evelyn's voice pattern. Planets across the galaxy began to resonate with light, as if the entire cosmos was aligning to a forgotten melody. The Chancellor whispered, "If this continues, every world will awaken." The Drath ambassador interrupted, terrified. "Then humanity is not a threat, they are a key." For the first time in recorded history, the Council agreed on something. They could not stop her, nor did they want to. As for Evelyn, she did not see herself as a savior or prophet. She still wore her worn medical uniform, still healed patients, still walked among the aliens as a simple nurse. But now when she sang, entire ecosystems listened. The trees bent slightly toward her voice. The rivers shimmered brighter, and even the wind seemed to carry her melody across the stars. The Klirathi began calling her the Soul Keeper, their children painting human symbols on stone walls in honor of her song. Ships from across the galaxy came quietly to Klyros 9, not for conquest or study, but to listen. When Evelyn sang at dusk, thousands would gather beneath the glowing sky, and each note would ripple through both worlds, the living and the dead, weaving them together like threads of light. Then one day a message came from deep space, traveling faster than any known transmission. It was not from the Council, nor any fleet. It was from something older, a voice that filled the air of Klyros 9, deep and resonant. "Your song reached us, child of Earth," it said, "and we remember." The air trembled. The stars above rearranged themselves into a luminous pattern. Across distant galaxies, long silent species stirred, ancient spirits reawakening at the call of a human melody. Evelyn looked to the sky, whispering through tears, "Then I am not alone." The planet's auroras burned brighter, spreading far beyond its orbit. And in that light the ancestors rose higher, merging into the cosmic winds. The Klirathi, the Council, and even the machines watching from distant stations felt it. The unmistakable pulse of unity, a reminder that even across endless stars, one voice filled with kindness could awaken the universe itself. And somewhere in the silence between worlds, a faint echo repeated through the dark. When humans sing, the stars listen. The melody that healed worlds Klyros 9 had become more than a planet. It had become a pilgrimage. Every passing cycle, thousands of ships drifted toward its orbit, carrying beings from every known system. Some came to witness the shimmering forest that sang in the wind. Others came to hear the voice of the human nurse whose melody had healed not only a world, but hearts long turned to stone. Evelyn stood on the platform overlooking the Valley of Light. The valley was vast, once a wasteland of ash, now blooming with crystal flora that emitted soft tones whenever touched by sunlight. The air was no longer heavy with death, but alive with symphonies of color and sound. Each note from the planet resonated upward, forming luminous waves that extended into orbit, reaching ships miles above to the Council. It was a miracle wrapped in impossibility. To Evelyn, it was simply life remembering how to breathe. She no longer wore her nurse's badge. Instead, she carried a small pendant, an ancient charm her grandmother once gave her, a symbol of Earth's oldest lullaby. It reminded her that she was still human, still just one small being in a vast and wondrous universe. But when she sang now, the stars themselves seemed to lean closer. Every vibration of her voice carried across space, echoing on worlds that hadn't known peace in centuries. Reports flooded the Council from across the galaxy. On the frozen moon of Tiras, where nothing had lived for 1,000 years, faint moss began to grow in patterns shaped like sound waves. On the storm world of Vesher Prime, the lightning had started pulsing in rhythmic patterns, matching Evelyn's last song. And on distant colonies, children woke from nightmares speaking her name, saying, "The nurse is singing again." Even machines responded. Long-dormant AIs began transmitting harmonic tones in their own digital voices. The galaxy had become a choir, each species unknowingly singing in tune with humanity's melody. The Galactic Council called it the Universal Resonance Event, But no data, no logic, no formula could define it. It was emotion turned into energy, empathy woven into matter, something science had long forgotten how to measure. Draven Cole, now commander of the newly formed Resonant Division, stood on the bridge of his ship watching the waves of light move through the void. He whispered, "She didn't just heal a world. She rewrote the heartbeat of the galaxy." Meanwhile, Evelyn spent her days teaching, not about medicine, not about physics, but about listening. She sat beneath the glowing trees of Clyros 9, surrounded by alien children of every shape and color. They laughed as they tried to match her songs, their voices forming odd but beautiful harmonies. "Don't try to copy," she told them gently, smiling. "Sing what your heart feels, not what your mind expects." And when they did, even the wind carried their laughter to the mountains, where echoes turned into music. For the first time in recorded memory, hundreds of species found unity, not through treaties or fear, but through sound. Then one day, an old transmission came from deep space, one that wasn't meant for anyone alive. It was a relic from a lost civilization, buried in time when decoded. It played a faint melody, the same tune Evelyn had sung that first night in the ward. Her heart stopped. "How can this be?" she whispered. The archives confirmed it was over 1,000,000 years old. Recorded long before humanity even existed, the council was stunned. The melody of the ancestors was older than the human race, yet humanity had carried it unknowingly, hidden in lullabies and love songs. Perhaps it wasn't coincidence, perhaps it was destiny. The realization spread. Humanity wasn't the beginning of the melody. They were its echo, the descendants of a forgotten harmony, reborn through flesh and memory. Evelyn stood under the twin suns of Clyros 9 as the knowledge settled in her heart. Her species had not discovered the song. They had remembered it. And by remembering, they had healed the galaxy. The council officially named humanity the custodians of harmony, a title meant to honor, but also to warn, because power without heart can turn dangerous. Yet Evelyn refused every ceremony, every title, every monument. She only said one thing quietly: "The song doesn't belong to humans. It belongs to everyone who listens." That night, she sang once more, not for the dying, but for the living. Her voice carried across continents and through clouds. It traveled across the stars and into the hearts of millions who sat in silence to listen. In that moment, there were no empires. No wars, no fear, only sound, soft, endless, pure. A melody that wrapped the universe in peace. And the ancestors whispered once again through the winds of light. When humans remember who they are, the stars themselves heal. The final song, the twin suns of Clyros 9, sank low over the horizon, bathing the world in gold and silver light. The air shimmered softly, filled with the quiet hum of the trees that had once been barren. Every breeze carried faint echoes of laughter, and every shadow sang when touched by warmth. Evelyn Hart sat beneath the luminous canopy, her silver-white hair glowing faintly in the dusk. Years had passed since that first night in the ward. She had healed countless beings, taught thousands to listen, yet her own strength had begun to fade. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Entire fleets no longer carried weapons but instruments of resonance. War had lessened, borders had softened, and across the stars the phrase "sing to us, please" had become a universal prayer for peace. Humans were no longer feared. They were revered as the keepers of memory. Yet Evelyn never saw herself as a savior. "I'm still just a nurse," she often said, her smile quiet and warm. "I simply heard what others ignored." That evening, as twilight painted the sky in swirling blues and pinks, a gentle knock came at her door. It was Kale, the ambassador who had once escorted her to the council. His face older, but his eyes still kind. He bowed slightly. "They've gathered for you, Evelyn." "Every world is listening tonight," she chuckled softly. "I've sung enough. Kale, the universe doesn't need my voice anymore." He shook his head. "It needs your last one." Outside, the Valley of Light was filled with beings from every known race. Children of different stars sat beside one another, their faces glowing in the aurora. Above them, in orbit, thousands of ships floated silently, broadcasting the moment to every corner of the galaxy. When Evelyn stepped forward, the crowd rose in reverent stillness. She looked at them, not as aliens, not as strangers, but as one family finally remembering its heartbeat. Her voice trembled as she began, Not from fear, but from age, gentle, fragile, yet full of grace. The melody she chose was the same one from that first night, the lullaby that had bridged the living and the dead. As the sound drifted across the valley, the silver motes of light rose once more. They swirled above her brighter than ever, until the entire sky became a sea of moving stars. From the heavens the spirits returned, Klirathi ancestors, human souls, beings of energy and memory, all dancing in harmony. Their glow wrapped around Evelyn like a living aura. Her voice grew stronger, lifting higher than the air itself. Then, something extraordinary happened. Every creature, every being, every voice in that valley joined her. The galaxy sang as one, from the ice worlds of Taras to the coral oceans of Veshar. Every life form added its own tone to the universal melody. Ships in orbit vibrated in resonance, their metal shells turning to instruments. Even the stars pulsed brighter, as if they too remembered the rhythm. It was no longer just a song, it was creation itself waking again. As the final note hung in the air, Evelyn smiled through tears. The light around her grew blinding, but not harsh. It was warm, loving, endless. She felt no fear, only peace. Her body dissolved into pure radiance, merging with the silver streams that danced in the sky. Her voice lingered for a moment longer, whispering words that echoed across space and time. Where there is sorrow, sing. Where there is silence, listen. Where there is darkness, be light. When the glow finally faded, there was no body, no trace, only the pendant she always wore. Lying gently on the ground, Kale picked it up, tears filling his eyes. The sky above Kleros 9 shimmered with a vast wave of light, spreading outward in every direction, and for the first time in history, every world in the galaxy aligned in the same rhythm, a pulse that would never stop, a heartbeat that belonged to them all. Generations later, they still spoke her name. Children sang her lullaby beneath twin suns, and travelers whispered her story before long voyages. And whenever the universe seemed too cold, someone somewhere would lift their voice and begin again, and the stars, as if remembering, would hum in gentle reply. Because the song had never truly ended, it had only changed singers. And in that eternal melody lived the truth the galaxy had once forgotten. When humans sing, the universe listens.